Has your organization unlocked the full potential of its hybrid cloud strategy? And have you done that through application modernization? Now, many of you might not know this, but before I was a podcaster and tech writer, I frequented the world of IT, and I spent a lot of time in application management. I still get flashbacks of trying to get 200 applications ready for Windows 7, and some of them were legacy apps that have got no chance of working in the Windows 7 environment, but that was a long time ago. And in today's episode, I sit down with an incredible guy. You know when you meet someone and you just hit it off with them straight away, you could just talk with them for hours? Well, Kyle, he's one of those guys. He's an IBM Fellow and CTO for IBM Z Software, an all-round great guy. And together, today, we're going to dive into how generative AI is set to transform application modernization and why it's essential for every IT leader and indeed business leader. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to California, where Kyle is going to explain how this technology is not just enhancing legacy systems, but also reshaping the future of enterprise workloads. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Kyle. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure, yeah. I'm an IBM Fellow and a CTO for Z Software organization. A lot of my focus is really, and it has been for some time now, on application modernization and really hybrid cloud strategy and integration. So a lot of cool opportunities come along with both of those areas. So that's largely what takes a lot of my time up these days.
Fantastic. Well, it's a pleasure to have you join me today. And every day I try and demystify a different topic here on the podcast. And with the emphasis on IT spending here in 2024, a lot of businesses challenged with doing more with less. There's also that problem of technical debt, and everybody's leaning towards modernizing applications at the same time. Can you elaborate on why enterprises should maybe be prioritizing this, and also how it aligns with creating a more tailored, intentional strategy for enterprise workloads? There's so much going on out there at the moment, isn't there, on both sides of the pond?
No, there really are. And at the end of the day, right, there's sort of two options, I think, that clients can choose to take. And one of them is really terrible in my estimation, which is let's modernize by migrating, rewriting, let's redo what we've done for the past several decades, right? There's a lot of assets that have been curated on the platform for quite some time. Clients have these assets, right? And so let's enhance these assets, right? Let's modernize these assets. And I think that's the important bit. But I will say that there are clients that feel that there's a little bit of a risk potentially in doing this in general, right? And so they do like weird things like, let's do updates to our kind of our core fabric that really backs our business. Let's do updates like maybe once a quarter, right? And they think, well, we're really minimizing risk by doing so. But the reality is it's just the opposite, right? Because they're introducing a quarter's worth of change all in one go and hoping it all just stitches together well. That's really not the right way to do this. You're introducing a ton of risk by doing that, obviously. And so what we have now is the ability for Gen AI to really kind of help, not take the reins. That's not what we think AI should do, is take the reins, but instead really assist these developers and assist the modernization practices moving forward to really help future-proof the enterprise. You mentioned technical debt, right? Yeah. So how do we future-proof the enterprise, right? And bring in, for example, kind of potentially, in some cases, the languages that our clients really deem to be strategic for their platform, for their future. Like, let's help bring those new languages in. Let's deliver a better experience, not only for the external consumers, but also their own developers. Like, let's make that experience better for them, which is going to go straight to agility. Let's make it so much easier for their business to respond to their own business needs, their own market demands. So a lot kind of gets wrapped into modernization, but it's all good for the business. And we think Gen AI can really help accelerate this modernization play.
And I do suspect for many people listening, they wouldn't have immediately thought about or even linked generative AI and application modernization. And the role of generative AI in application modernization, is it in fact pivotal? So can you explain how developers could maybe better leverage generative AI for code translation and modernization, and what makes IBM's approach unique in this area?
Oh, no, certainly. I think we've all seen sort of Gen AI is still relatively nascent in this space. And I think largely what we've seen a lot is the ability to go from like natural language to code, We can do things like, hey, please generate me an insertion sorts in Python or in COBOL or in Java or whatever language you might desire. Like that's sort of where it kind of started in the Gen AI for code space, but we're really getting much more sophisticated now and actually doing language to language, like programming language to programming language, and having Gen AI really help accelerate that space. And so that's really largely where we're focused in IBM Z on our application modernization initiative, right? Which is about how do we take, for example, COBOL as a programming language, like enterprise COBOL, not kind of textbook COBOL, but enterprise COBOL. And how do we help leverage AI to actually transform that COBOL to another target language? In our case, we're targeting Java as our first initial kind of foray into the space. And it's not to say that COBOL is not strategic for our platform, because it is. But also, so is Java. Also, so is Node. So is Go. So is Python. So all these languages are also strategic. And for those clients that really want Java to be their strategic enterprise language of choice, we are helping them do that transformation from COBOL to that language. And I'll add, it's what you asked, what makes our solution unique in this space. It's a full lifecycle approach, just with AI sort of as the heartbeat. But there's a whole, I guess, body built around that heartbeat. And that's the life cycle that we provide. So for starters, it's about application understanding, right? It's about actually really refactoring, helping to decompose these applications into discrete business services. Then we actually use a mix. We think our sweet spot is a mix of rules and AI. Traditionally, it's all been a rules-based approach, but we're bringing some rules, but then really leaning on Gen AI to really help make this transformation like look really good and perform very well, and not be that traditional kind of JOBOL where it's just kind of COBOL syntax expressed in Java, which really frankly hurts me. And it hurts our clients that have tried to go down that path. It's really not recognizable as Java. It's not really maintainable. You're not hitting that goal of future-proofing and agility. So we have kind of all that baked in, and we do this incrementally as well. It's not big bang. It's really one business service at a time. And we know, IBM knows, right, how to run mixed language workload on our platform incredibly efficiently, all within the same transaction unit of work. So COBOL and Java, even assembler, all working together in the same transaction unit of work. We've been doing this for a long time because, frankly, like Java's legacy too. We use legacy as kind of a bad word sometimes, but Java's been on our platform for 25 years. We've been investing in that space for a long time. This is not a new space for us to get into. And so really that whole like life cycle that we have is what makes our approach unique. And what I didn't mention was we also auto-generate tests to validate what we've done throughout the process. And we're just starting to roll some of that out in this last quarter, but there's a lot more to come. So that's a really long answer to I think a short question, but there's just so much to our solution that we're really proud about that really does make it unique in this space.
Absolutely. And if we also throw in economic uncertainty, global conflict, businesses challenged with doing more with less, and budgets continuously shifting, I've got to ask, what are your expectations for evolving ways in which generative AI will continue to support enterprises on these modernization journeys? Because a lot of businesses need a little help. A lot are uncertain about generative AI. There was a certain amount of anxiousness last year. I think that is changing now. But what are you seeing here?
Yeah, and you brought up sort of like just the anxiousness around it. And you're right, because a lot of it was, how do we validate? How do we trust? How do we trust what this did was the right thing? And so I think and again, I kind of go back to technical debt, like our clients, many of them, too many of them, I should say, not all, right? But many of them actually don't necessarily have really good, strong muscle around kind of automated testing. And so every time they make changes in their applications, it kind of really, in their estimation, like is a worrisome thing to do, which again is counter to what we want to do in this industry, right? What we want to do with the innovation we can do with software development and engineering. And so where we think Gen AI is it can also really help here this year and into next is around that test case generation and that synthetic data generation in support of these tests. And I'll also say, I think we're going to see it later this year, most certainly going into next year, we're going to see going beyond just language code generation, right? Programmatic language code generation, right? We're also looking at modernizing the way automation is done on the platforms as well. And again, this is another big area of focus for a lot of our clients, right? How do we bring in sort of more contemporary, more modernized automation frameworks and have them support the Z platform, right? And so that automation is going to be really significant. In the context of Z, what do you have, right? Our clients have a lot of JCL. They have a lot of Rex, right? Yeah. These are how they do both sort of automation and scripting on the platform. Well, we're actually going to be leaning on Gen AI to do a transformation, a modernization of that into Python for scripting, into Ansible for sort of that broader sort of bringing in the whole automation control plane in support of Z. We've had a lot of investment in Ansible over the years, specific ZOS collections curated out on Galaxy and Automation Hub. And our ability to help our clients modernize their existing automation versus saying, hey, you got to toss all this away and start fresh here because this is a great place to be. No, that's awful, right? For net new use cases, sure. But they have decades of automation they built up and curated. We want to help them modernize that to Python and Ansible. And we think that's a big space for our clients moving forward. And lastly, I'll also say, and this might come up again later, but explanation's a big element, right? That's not necessarily about switching languages, but better understand what's there today. Because a lot of our clients do find COBOL strategic. Again, so do we, right? But they want to explain those assets that they've had for 10, 20, 30, 40 years so they can then better understand where the different moving parts are, so they can better understand how to enhance and modernize and improve on that COBOL and add new business services to their COBOL applications as well. So explanation, I think, is going to become a key enabler for our clients moving forward as well in the coming years.
And before you came on the podcast today, I was reading that the average small business with 500 or fewer employees has something like 172 applications, and mid-market companies between 500 and 2,500 employees have 255 apps on average, and that number continuously increases. And of course, they're scattered everywhere now. There's no longer a server in a room that nobody quite knows what it does, but it does something for the last 10 years. It can be very complex managing application estates now. So modernization is key to executing a successful hybrid cloud strategy. So how are you at IBM envisioning this integration? How are you imagining this evolving, and what are the primary benefits for businesses in adopting this approach? Because we can't just carry on going on that way, right?
No, you're absolutely right. And I'll say, even in IBM, there was a time where public cloud was the destination. Yeah. And while we talked about hybrid, it was really just sort of viewed as a rest stop, like along the way to this nirvana that was public cloud. And the market has proven out that's really not the reality, right? Hybrid actually is the destination for a number of reasons, right? Some of which we covered earlier about, hey, you have all these assets, modernize these assets, if that's the right thing, modernize these assets and integrate them with the new assets that you're creating. Because as you just stated, long gone are the days where the entirety of an application is deployed to a single platform, right? Yeah. Those days have been gone for quite some time, right? The entirety of an application is consuming a number of public cloud services, private cloud services, on-prem business and data services. That's what it's all about, right? Every platform out there just provides an amount of business and data services, and you need to consume those services very easily and very cost effectively. And so that's what we're really helping to achieve. And it's also not a binary proposition here. Like, are we public cloud? Are we on-prem private cloud? Like it used to be viewed as binary, right? But it's really an and value proposition. It's all these things coming together, right? So it's really take advantage of what you have, add to it, integrate with it. And frankly, we're not all fighting over pieces of the same darn pie, right? This is not a zero-sum game in this space. As you just mentioned, there are new startups popping up all the time. Our own enterprises are building new experiences all the time. There's so much more innovation and more experiences the world's going to deliver in this space that require new development to actually build these experiences, that we can't spend our time just rewriting stuff that's already there, right? Spend our time building the new experiences, adding the new innovation to the market, and then integrating all the different things that you already have together in one cohesive kind of deliverable that we can share with our clients, whether they're internal clients or external clients. So I think that the fact that we're like settling on hybrid as indeed the destination just unlocks so much opportunity for us moving forward to really innovate at scale. But again, making sure that all of these complex working parts of an application are all really brought together really seamlessly.
And I'm curious, from the conversations you're having with businesses of all sizes around the world, what are the most significant challenges enterprises are facing in application modernization? How are you at IBM helping overcome some of those hurdles? I would imagine you've heard and seen so many different stories throughout the world and different business sizes, right?
Yeah, Neil, you're not wrong. I would say one of, if not the biggest challenge a lot of our clients have, frankly, is application understanding. And I'll tell you why. We kind of use this term monolith, and it might sound like a pejorative term, but it's really not. Let me describe what we mean when we say monolith. When we talk about these monolithic applications on the platform, it's really a byproduct of the longevity of these applications. It's really a byproduct of the fact that one of the core tenets of the platform is that you could have an application written 30, 40 years ago that can still run today. And that's true, right? But what we're seeing is sort of, I guess, the potential downside to that. And the potential downside that we're seeing is that these applications are spanning, again, in many cases, decades. And what that means is the original architectural and design fidelity is lost over time. Why? Because you actually have different authors of this program over the years. And each of these authors has their own kind of design voice. They have their own architectural voice. Like you can, and even in my history, I can look at kind of a system and I can sort of understand, hey, I think this was done by, this is probably a combination of these four people that built this part of it, because I know, since I've worked with them, I know how they write their code and how they organize their thoughts and how it manifests themselves in the deliverable. Well, when you have 20, 30, 40 people doing that over time, these applications just kind of grow and they expand. And again, you lose that original fidelity. And then you kind of have this layering motion of maybe a developer says, I want to develop this helper function that I need, not really knowing that was already in this application from 12 years ago. They didn't know it. So they kind of have repeated and sort of redesigned and redeveloped really kind of redundant code. And so that's kind of where this monolith just kind of grows over time. It still does everything it needs to do, but it's now kind of hard to understand all of the moving parts, all of the module dependencies, all of the data dependencies that this application has. So this application understanding space, which is kind of part one or step one of our kind of Gen AI motion in this space, is to get that application understanding. And let me give you an example. Working with a client last year, that a simple account balance read, just to read the account balance of a particular individual, spanned over 40 modules. That's 40. So you can see the complexity that's introduced as these things kind of grow over time. So I think that's a big one, is application understanding. Second is really, as I mentioned earlier, code explanation, right? Code wasn't always necessarily documented, and if it was, not documented well. So let's use Gen AI to actually explain the code and do inline documentation of that code so it becomes more understandable as folks are looking at, I mean, heck, I've looked at Java code from 20 years ago that really could use some code explanation, right? I mean, so it's not, this is not a COBOL problem. This is a code problem. And then lastly, testing, right? I mean, that's a huge challenge, is the sort of the lack, I would say, of a really good automated testing framework and automated testing pipeline. And so those three, application understanding, explanation of code, and testing, I think are the most significant challenges. And frankly, we're leaning on Gen AI to help with all three.
So as this adoption of generative AI in application modernization continues to gain momentum, let's fast forward 12 months, 24 months. What changes do you foresee in the roles and skill sets required within IT teams? And how can some of those employees, how can they better prepare for that shift? Because it feels there's going to be different skills required now.
Yeah, that's a great question. I've heard that not often enough, to be quite honest with you. So I think folks need to start thinking about this. I would say, first of all, developers can rest assured, right? Because this is AI, in our estimation, in my estimation, is a developer-assisted motion. So you still need your strong developer skills and acumen to actually have this be successful, to have the right marriage between a developer and kind of the AI system that's helping basically make their jobs easier. I will add, though, that many think that it will reduce the amount of skilled development professionals that need to exist in the market, right? They think that Gen AI is going to help maybe have lesser skilled people be amazing. I actually think the opposite. I think we're actually going to need even more kind of acute developer skills in a number of key areas to make this really successful. And I think in no small part, the ones that are going to be more successful and going to kind of lead the pack here moving forward are the ones that are actually better application architects, because they really are going to need to know what they want, how everything in their application is going to come together, how it's all connected, like the overall design, really maximize their usage of the AI assistant capabilities that are offering in the market today. Because if you're just going to use AI to generate like A function B, function C, function D for you, you're missing out on the bigger picture. And so I think we need actually more, not maybe more skilled, but tighter skilled and maybe more kind of nuanced skills in the area of being a better application architect. I think we're also going to see developers going to need to be able to really interpret code on the fly in the moment that they didn't write themselves to ensure it's what they really want and what they really need. Because as they lean on AI to say, help me with this task, and the AI pumps it out, certainly you can, but you should not just blindly say, yep, that's what I want, let's go run with it. They need to be able to do that code interpretation on the fly to make sure it's really lining up with what they wanted and to help kind of massage that code as it goes into their framework, which again is a different skill than I'm gonna do this myself, and I'm gonna be responsible for every single line that goes in this and have intimate knowledge of every single line that goes in this. So I think that's different. The other is we need more of a security mindset right up front to identify these potential risks, right? With something in the AI generating actually security vulnerabilities, right? There are certainly tools to assist here, right? But we're going to need the developers to have more acumen, right? To be able to leverage them as a part of their kind of day-to-day development cycles and development activities. This can't be something we put off until the end, because you might end up with a ton of vulnerabilities that is really going to slow down your development cycle. And I mean, and then lastly, right? And you mentioned it earlier, everything is changing so quickly all around everywhere, right? And this is what hybrid is all about, but it's all interconnected. And so we're going to have just better kind of skills around integration testing muscle in this space, right? I mean, integration testing goes obviously beyond unit, beyond functional testing. We need really strong kind of muscle acumen in integration testing. That's going to be a big skill that we need to build up to make sure that as we're building these systems, these highly integrated systems that span multiple platforms and multiple services, we need really good integration testing frameworks in place to enable this to happen. And then all the automation that backs all of this.
I'd love to bring to life everything that we're talking about here with maybe a case study or success story. And I appreciate you probably can't mention any names, but is there any example you can share where IBM strategies and technologies in application modernization and generative AI have significantly benefited an enterprise? Is that an example you could possibly share?
Yeah, there is. And I could actually name a client, which is also good. It's always less fun when it has to be anonymous. At least for me, it's like, is he really telling the truth? But yeah, I am. But when you look at, certainly the Gen AI space is still fairly new. Like this just went live late October of last year. We have a number of, this is where unfortunately I can't go into specific clients, but what I will say is the pipeline is significant, and we have been helping a lot of clients worldwide with proof of concepts, actually leaning on our technology to help them start this modernization process using Gen AI techniques in their application estate. And I'm incredibly encouraged by the results we are seeing. Now, I will say in the application modernization overall space, pre-Gen AI, which working with this client, we're starting to evolve into leveraging Gen AI. And I'll mention Atruvia, right? Atruvia is probably the largest banking IT provider in Germany. And we've been working with them for a while. And what they wanted to do was future-proof their platform, future-proof their core banking framework. And so it was really a 100%, mostly 100% COBOL framework. And their strategy was to go to Java. And so we worked with them for a while on helping them interoperate, again, between COBOL and Java in the same transaction unit of work. They needed to be dealing in that space. They couldn't be dealing with the two-phase commit, compensating transactions, all that nonsense that really, really kind of complicates your entire kind of application on everything that surrounds it. So they wanted this all running on Z, a mix of COBOL and Java. I can tell you today, in going through this process with them, they have Java enabled over 85% of their core banking framework. They run over 400 million transactions a day with peak throughput reaching over 12,000 transactions per second, all leveraging a mixed language workload of Java, COBOL, and at times assembler, right? Again, all managed by the same transaction unit of work, right? So it's, if anything, this is demonstrating the value of what we can do with Gen AI. Now it's going to help make that transition from COBOL to Java even easier. What Atruvia did was they said, any new net business service, that's Java, right? It's an exception to be anything but Java. Also, if they're going to go in and meaningfully update an existing COBOL service, at that time and at that time alone, do they then transform and migrate that one COBOL service to Java? So then over time, more and more of their COBOL assets are getting transformed and modernized to Java because, again, they wanted that future proof. They wanted the agility, which they have achieved in spades. They've done a great job here. But yeah, it's a great story that we'd love to tell. I mean, when we have a client at that scale, right, with 85% of their workload on the platform is mixed language, with 400 million trans a day, right? It's pretty significant. And again, this is where Gen AI is really going to help accelerate that motion for all of our clients worldwide so they too can get there and achieve the success.
Brilliant. I think that does such a great job of just shining a light on this and the difference that it can make. And if we continue to look ahead, are there any other key trends that you might anticipate IT infrastructure and application development might be encountering over the next few months and years? And ultimately, anything that enterprises should be better positioning themselves to take advantage of in the near future? You probably get asked this a lot, but what excites you and what trends are you seeing?
Yeah, and for sure, right? I mean, I think it's pretty evident that AI really is changing the way developers approach sort of problem solving in general, right? I mean, and it's automating more now than just the simple stuff, right? It's automating more than meaningful stuff, and it's going to help with optimizing what you're building, making recommendations along the way, right? The impact of all of this is that I believe that the development lifecycle is going to be significantly reduced, right? Both in dev and testing, because there'll be more and more AI assisted as we're moving forward. I think the fallout's sort of a negative word. I think with the benefit of this is going to be really a more significant focus on innovation. And there's going to be a challenge keeping up now with the rate and pace of that innovation. So organizations need to be prepared and need to prepare the processes by which they can deliver these new experiences quickly with confidence. Well, this might sound like traditional DevSecOps, but I would say in many enterprises, this isn't fully optimized. Again, earlier I mentioned kind of the risks some see with kind of continuous delivery and continuous updates, right? Well, it's going to have to be optimized. Otherwise, they are going to be left behind, right? As other companies are innovating at a rate and pace and scale that we've never seen before, because Gen AI helps them do things so much more faster. So what are we talking about there? We're obviously talking about get your DevSecOps kind of pipeline in place, get that in place, get that optimized, right? I mentioned earlier, integration testing across the board. Again, this huge rate and pace of innovation is not just on Z, it's going to be everywhere, right? And all of these applications, not all, but so many of them are interconnected in ways that they weren't previously. Now that we have so many options now to consume the right business service or the right data service from the right platform, right? Hybrid's about like just best fit platform for that workload. So you're going to be consuming services from different platforms. Integration testing becomes very important in this space. So make sure you have the right kind of processes built around that. There's going to be a significant operational impact as well, right? Needing to manage all of this at scale never before seen, right? Making sure we have full operational insight across the spectrum, right? Across all the different platforms, no black boxes whatsoever. Like organizations really need to get prepared for that because it's coming, right? And honestly, I'm really darn excited to see this shift occur and really what the future holds when we start seeing all that innovation come to life. Like, I think it's going to be amazing.
Wow, incredibly cool. I've learned so much today around application modernization, how it allows enterprises to execute a successful hybrid cloud strategies, and how IT leaders are recognizing this. But it's time to have a little bit of fun with you now. I mentioned a few moments ago that you've probably heard and seen a lot of crazy things throughout your career. So I'm going to ask you to look back at that career now. What's the funniest or most interesting story that you are allowed to share that has happened in your career? I suspect there's a few you can't, but is there anything you can?
Yeah, no, certainly. And it's sort of two come to mind, and I'll try to be brief. They're mostly ones that folks make fun of me for. Yeah. But, I mean, if you can't poke fun of yourself, like who can you poke fun of? So we all travel. Many of us probably a lot more than we'd like to. And I had one trip that was rather significant in nature. I had to go to Bangkok to meet with a CEO of a family-owned bank. And it was over 24-hour kind of wall clock time for me to get there and land in Bangkok, and spent the entire day with the IBM team, kind of preparing for this otherworldly presentation that was going to be amazing. Went back to the hotel after a long day, and about 9 o'clock at night, no, not right, exactly 9 o'clock tonight. That's how acute this memory is for me. I got a phone call from the client team saying, you know what? we really want this bank to sign this contract for us. It's coming up. We really want to get this contract. So we want to get ink on paper. And so we're kind of going to push your talk because we feel your talk's more future capabilities around modernization and where they want to be investing in the future. And so we just kind of want to have the talk on security, and we're going to kind of postpone yours a little bit. I was like, okay, no problem. When is it going to be? Well, some other trip. So I said, okay, great. I woke up the next morning, changed my flights, and proceeded to fly 24 hours, about 27 hours wall clock time to head back home. Wow. So I had over a 50-hour trip for absolutely nothing. Which, I mean, I did see some pretty cool monitor lizards, like giant monitor lizards all over the place, like just randomly walking around these parks, which was really cool. But yeah, I get made fun of a lot as don't pull a Kyle. Right. I mean, it's this thing that has become a thing now with a lot of my colleagues when they've heard about that. And I'll just do the second one, which isn't as funny, but people still make fun of me for. This was only going about 3/4 of the way across the country to go meet with the IBM local team on this big plan for a kind of a wealth management modernization for a very large bank, not a family owned. And I get up in the morning, shower, head into the meeting. And I sit in the meeting, ready to rock and roll, and this gal on the other side of the room says, excuse me, are you wearing cologne? I said, no, I am not. I just used the hotel shampoo. She goes, well, I'm really allergic to cologne, and that smells an awful like cologne, like cologne. Can you please leave the room? And I said, I just looked, and I was literally stunned. Like, okay, you guys brought me here specifically so I could help you. And everyone was shocked. Like, they were honestly aghast. So I left the room. I sat out in the other room and then proceeded to ask, is there a WebEx? Is there a Zoom that I can kind of do this remotely? And they said, you know what? No, this room isn't really equipped for that. Like, can we just get on the laptops? End of the day, I just ended up going back to my hotel, pretty much fuming. The next day was a lot different, by the way. She was the one that wasn't allowed in the room. And we had a WebEx that she got to tap into for the next 2 days. But it was really odd. And when I shared that story, they're like, what the heck? Like, I wasn't even wearing cologne. Like, it was a very surreal experience. And I will say she no longer works at IBM, not because of this, but yeah, that was, you think that's something you should probably share in advance. If there's people that you haven't met before are coming into a meeting with you that maybe you're deathly allergic to something that they might put on their bodies inadvertently, like hotel shampoo. But anyway, those are the two I had that I thought I'd share that just come to mind when you talk about what strange things have happened in your career.
Oh, two absolutely fantastic stories. Do they do Secret Santa over there in the US? Because if they did, and I had you, I would get you cologne every year, but without that.
That's exactly right. I mean, honestly, Neil, I'd be disappointed if you didn't.
Oh, well, it's been fantastic chatting with you today. And for anyone listening wanting to talk about more of the serious things we've talked about today, maybe want to find out more information, connect with you or your team, or just have a look around the IBM website, which is huge. Where would you like to point everyone listening?
Oh, my goodness. So I would start with searching for Watson X Code Assistant for Z.
Yeah,
that'll land you in right up front, the lead page for everything that we really talked about today. You'll get good full around understanding of the whole lifecycle experience. And yeah, you can engage with the team. We can get engaged with an on the ground POC, work with you and your teams. We'll bring our top notch client engineering teams on site to actually help you in this journey. So I think that's a great starting point to go to. And then certainly find me on LinkedIn, hit me up with any questions you got, and I'll definitely be responding and looking to connect.
Well, we talked about so much there from why IT spending should start with modernizing applications. You're speaking my language there. How developers can harness generative AI for code translation and modernization. Expectations for new evolving ways in which generative AI will support enterprises on their modernization journeys. And I've got to say, one of the things that I'll probably remember more than anything many years after this podcast is your very amusing and stories that probably didn't feel amusing at the time, but they really were. Thank you so much for sharing all that with me today. Really appreciate your time.
Hey, Neil, appreciate your time as well, my friend. You take care.
Wow, what an incredible guy. And I meant what I said there. 5, 10, 15 years from here, and I look back at over, 3, 4, 5,000 interviews. Those stories that Kyle shared, that is the kind of stuff that I'll remember forever. But on a more serious note, as businesses gear up for faster innovation and more complex system integrations, over to you. What steps is your organisation taking right now to harness the power of AI in its modernisation efforts? And if you are in one of those businesses that are still trying to pretend that it's not happening or banning it or shutting it down or putting it on the it'll be nice to do one day, let me know your story there as well. I want to hear your thoughts. I want you to join the conversation so we can explore together how these technologies are making a definitive impact on the IT landscape. So email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, just at Neil C. Hughes. And until next time, keep pushing the boundaries of what your applications can achieve. And remember to share those stories. But thank you for listening as always. And until next time, don't be a stranger.